jump because even electricity has been revised upwards. Let me tell you why with 1,000 shillings, your neighbor might get more units than you. Now this week, going around social media, I did see some arguments of how some would pay for 1,000 shillings and get 45 kilowatts hour, and then others will pay 1,000 shillings and get 62 kilowatt hour. In fact, your neighbor, your next door neighbor, might be getting more units than you. And the EPRA is saying that is quite legal. So this is explainer. So you see, it is running on the latest reviews by EPRA that will give you 7.7 shillings per unit of energy charge. That's the latest one. They kicked it out because then immediate former President Uhuru Kenyatta wanted to drive the cost by 30%. So if you are on a line that is 100 kilowatts hour rated, with 1,000 shillings, you're getting lesser units. So you're praying that whatever it is your house is placed or your apartment is not on the 100 kilowatt hour line. But if you are on the 100 kilowatt hour line, you'll pay 1,000 bob and get lesser units. If you're not, you'll get more units, according to EPRA. And then how this then is determined is not up to you and your landlord. No, you just find yourself in the line because KPLC will come and drop a line at your house, and then all of a sudden you realize we are on the 100 kilowatt hour line. So we're paying more. Anyway, let's give him more time, isn't it? But the cost of living is attached to the cost of energy. What's going to happen? It is 8.5% inflation month on month for the month of August. September is here, skyrocketing fuel prices, unga at the worst level. What's going to happen in the first 1 month of President Ruto? Not so good. Not a bed of roses. You do not expect that. My name is Simba, Elijah Charles Kiage. This is Lookupbusiness. Let's get started. Latest review of fuel prices by EPRA takes full effect across the country. Some public transport operators have resorted to taking their matatus off the road as they find it difficult to price fares amidst the high fuel prices. The operators lament the current situation and are now asking the government to extend the fuel subsidy so as to cushion their businesses and commuters who now have to pay more to keep up with the cost of living. The operators now say that adding or adjusting fares for customers is not an option as majority of them cannot afford the fares, which they say is affecting their businesses as they are still asking for the old fares.
Kuna shida imeingia. Mafuta ikipanda, kila kitu inapanda. Mwananchi hana pesa na hana chochote. Saa hii magari yetu inabeba watu 14 na haturuhusiwi kubeba zaidi ya hapo. Ile ya 18 ni 18, ile ya 14 ni 14. Saa hii tunaongea mafuta iko juu kabisa na hizi magari zetu ni za petroli. Na tukiangalia kwa ukweli kuna shida hapo. Maana hiyo inabidi tuongeze bei. Na tukiongeza bei, ule mwananchi kwanza amelala bila chakula. Na tukimuongezea hata shilingi moja exactly tutakuwa tumefinya sana. Kwa hivyo ningeomba na ningemsihi Bwana Rais. Maana ndiye tumechukua yeye kwa roho moja. Amateremsha fertilizer ni sawa. Lakini kuna kitu imebaki. Mafuta ikienda juu, ukweli wa mambo hakuna kitu tutasema ati itateremka.
Sasa mafuta ikipanda hivi, Hizi hatujaongeza nauri. Ila wazazi wenye wamevinyika hapa Kenya, sijui hapa sisi tunaona serikali tafadhali wafunguze mafuta ifike around 100. Saa hii ukienda Kitui, Machakos tu Kitui, hiyo ni unatumia around 6000 mafuta. Na ule abiria pale ukienda Nairobi umwambie 700 hawezi lipa. Kwa hivyo analipa 500 ile ya kawaida. Ile itaomba serikali mafuta ifike ile ya kawaida 120 100. Juu mwananchi wa kawaida ana nguvu za ana makuna kazi ya anaajiriwa ama anaongezewa pesa. Kwa hivyo ile iko sisi tunaomba serikali ya Ruto na wale wengine wanasimamia hii kitu. Tafadhali hata unga sasa itapanda.
Sasa hivi leo asubuhi nimekunywa 35. Nimekunywa ngiri 7 na nimepewa 78. Hata saa hii tunaongea vile nimefanya mahesabu, sina mafuta ya kurudi tena Kitui, hakuna sina mafuta hata kidogo, hata ngari yenyewe nimeiweka. Sasa hii hakuna kazi. Maana hiyo sio kazi, ukibaki na shilingi 400 gari itapata nini na mwenyewe atakula nini? Sasa hata niko si kama nimeenda nimechange na niko hivyo kazi hakuna.
Kenyans now say they have to find alternatives to beat the current crisis occasioned by the high cost of fuel.
Wakati bei ya mafuta ikiwa juu, tunaona ugumu sana kusafiri. Unaona kama ni wazazi, kwa sababu watoto wetu wako katika shule za mabweni, inabidi tunapigiana simu, tunaambiana katika ile hali ambayo nilioko siwezi nikasafiri, itakuwaje? Enda tafadhali unichukulie mtoto uniletee. Na si kwa sababu ya kupenda kwao, inabidi tunaelewana, tunaweza kusikizana na tunachukua mtoto tunaletea yule mwingine. Lakini kama serikali inaweza kushughulikia hizo bei za mafuta zirudi chini na pia bidhaa zingine, itakuwa rahisi hata kwa wazazi kuchukua magari yao na pia kwenda kuchukua watoto. Na tunajua kwamba security ya watoto sana ni wakati mzazi anaweza kujifikisha huko.
Investments at the Nairobi Securities Exchange were all looking up this week after Kenya successfully went through a peaceful election period that saw President Uhuru Kenyatta transfer power to President Ruto. Even as the markets experienced subdued trading in the weeks leading to the election and before the Supreme Court's decision on the petitions, the markets remained resilient, a huge contrast from the 2017 crash. Edwin John Mukora with the analysis.
If there was a week that was a true testament of the liquidity in the market, it was this week, with the good stocks making a healthy jump in investment, with Safaricom leading the way as expected, and a couple of surprise packages. Even as total shares traded and market cap started on a negative Monday, total equity deals went up by 72%, which was a clear indication that investors were getting ready to hit the market after the Supreme Court's decision. Safaricom led the day as expected with a total of 3 million shares traded, with banking quotas also reflecting the same trend of being the safe bets for majority of local investors, with equity registering 1 million shares traded. So Monday brought in the new kid, KPLC, and everybody was wondering why they were turning these volumes, and one name kept appearing, Ndindi Nyoro. He tripled his shares to 27 million, and that changed the trading for the entire week. Tuesday came, and we got a new president, and the markets showed Safaricom traded a historical 13 million shares. The new boy, KPLC, did not stop, as it oversaw a remarkable 9 million shares traded, opening a 10% gain in the stock as investors rushed to put money on the puny KPLC that had been trading below the market value for ages. Banking quotas, equity, cooperative and KCB all hit more than 1 million in volume, cementing the reality in the market. To show you that the market was extremely liquid, all the big volumes went to the sure bet quotas, which is the telecommunication, that is Safaricom, and the banking quotas, classic NSE. With the news being KPLC adding another 10% in its stock value, the same trend was retained in Wednesday's trading, with Safaricom, KPLC, Corp, and Equity retaining the top 5, albeit with reduced volumes. Whether this drive on NSE will correct the bad standing since January is a trend to be seen. What we know is that investors at NSE are quite liquid. For Lookupbusiness, I'm Edwin John Moko.
Edwin John Mukora. Potato farmers in Nakuru County have reason to smile after the national government launched a 127 million shillings program to bolster the potato subsector in the county. The program, running under the National Agricultural Rural Inclusive and Growth Project by the ministry, will prioritize farm mechanization, development of high-quality planting material, and overseeing the implementation of cold storage facilities. The ministry is working with over 3,000 smallholder farmers from Molo, Joro, Kuresoi North, Gilgil, and Kuresoi South, which are the largest potato-producing sub-counties within devolved unit for improved production of the crop sufficient for local demand and export markets.
The global averages that we see, the reported averages that we see is actually 40 tons per hectare. So when we are aiming for 25 tons per hectare, it's really not a long shot. It's quite achievable, and the boost that we're getting from the county government through NARIG is really going to help us along. In terms of attaining the soil depths, in terms of attaining the right pliability of soils, in terms of promoting tuberization and tuber expansion so that we can meet the demands that the market is demanding in terms of quantities and sizes.
Though potatoes are the second most important food value chain in Kenya after maize, they had not been prioritized. Other vital chains in the county are fish and livestock.
The way to go now is by introducing mechanized production. That way we make farming attractive in majority of our youth who are going to be employed in the production process. We know, of course, there are a number of youth groups that are also involved in this particular project, all of them channeling the final product or their farm products to the union for commercial, for selling. For Nakuru County, we have about 7 digital cohorts whom we are working with. We have the Shamba, the digital marketer for potatoes, who have been heavily involved in the marketing of Nakuru potatoes. We have learned from reliable sources and even from the market that the potatoes from Nakuru are normally given priority number 1 when it comes to sourcing from the market end.
Tumefahamu ya kwanza kwamba tungependa kuongeza mazao. Hiyo ni core objective ya hii project. Lakini vile vile tungependa kuona biashara ikikua. Na tunajua ya kwamba Kenya yetu na hasa wakati huu miaka 2-3 imepita sasa, hali ya hewa imekuwa sio nzuri. So tungependa tutafute mimea ambayo tutaikuza kwa muda mfupi, alafu ikatuzalishia chakula ili tuweze kuona ya kwamba food security ya taifa letu inakuwa guaranteed. Viazi ni mmea ambao unakuwa kwa muda mfupi sana. Miezi 4 tumeweza kupata harvest ya kwanza. Kwa hivyo tunaweza tukakuza hata crops 2 ama 3 kwa mwaka moja, na hiyo itasaidia sana kupunguza mambo ya ukosefu wa chakula. Vile vile tukiweza kuwa na stock, kwa mfano tutaweza kuweka viazi wakati ziko mingi, wakati zinaharibika tunaweka kwenye store, alafu wakati kuna kiangazi tunazitoa, ili tunajaribu kuona ya kwamba viazi vinapatikana kwa wingi hata wakati wa kiangazi across the country, to improve food security.
For Lookupbusiness, Simba, Elijah Charles, Kiage. It is week close. We do expect that the markets are going to close today at 3 p.m. So when you look at it, this week we've only traded for 4 days because on Tuesday we took a break to swear in our president, Dr. Samoei William Ruto. But then whether you like it or not, just like that story we just saw from Edwin John Mukora, one counter is a headline trading this week, and that is KPLC. We don't know why. And today we're going to have that conversation on whether indeed this is the stock then to put your money in. But let's cross to the data that we have for you here this morning so you can see exactly how the markets were looking like as they open today. It's been 2 hours and 18 minutes of trading. Let's cross over, and we're going to start with the gainers as far as today's trading is concerned, and that's exactly how they closed yesterday. So KPLC really did rally that trading yesterday, because you can see for the very first time in years, KPLC is now crossed or jumped the 2 shilling mark, because now today you can get the share at just 2 shillings flat. And by the way, this has been a day on a day gaining this week since we opened the markets Monday. And we do know why. Let me just talk about a new one again. Nairobi Business Ventures. Now you can get it at 3 shillings and 40 cents. By the way, whatever is going on this particular venture, that is Nairobi Business Ventures, we do know that they announced that they're going to diversify their counter into manufacturing and airline business. We're still waiting for that to take shape. But you can actually see that indeed that effect is getting felt right now, because yes, since last year when they made that announcement and they announced that investment that they want to get to take into cement manufacturing and the airline business, you can see that indeed investors are still hoping that this particular stock then is going to start, you know, making money. You could say that. But then you can see Capture One Tea is now back again at 110 shillings, representing 7.58% change as of yesterday's trading. Let me just confirm whether we have any of those particular stocks from yesterday on today's trading. Indeed, Nairobi Business Ventures is also there at 3 shillings and 50 cents. Right now, that's the only one in that particular list. Let's move on to the biggest losers in as much as yesterday's trading is concerned, and that's exactly how they opened this morning as well. Remember, it's been 2 hours and 20 minutes of trading. Let's confirm that. Portland, by the way, this has been there. Now, let me tell you why they are here. Because if you look at the announcement that they made this week, they want to settle the Athi squatters on that Athi River plant, and it looks as if majority of investors really not like what is going on that particular stock. But if you look at where they are now, you can get that share at 6 shillings and 86 cents. That represents a negative 9.74. Listen, this is a particularly government stock. You don't expect much of headlines. The only headline that we got from them is that sale of their piece of land, which they intend to put that money somewhere else. Looks as if investors have not really liked whatever's going on in that particular stock. Already, you would expect that to be there. And Sasini also, you'd expect that to be there. So not so much of a change in terms of that. Portland Cement, other ones that have news of that sell-off, of that 798-acre piece of land in Athi, which majority of investors are probably saying, we don't like that, but they've not been performing well. We do know exactly also what's happening with Portland Cement, quite a subdued counter. Let's go to the big boys, the movers, in as much as yesterday's trading is concerned, and oh my, Safaricom. Oof. 19 million. Wow. And they have been hitting these numbers, by the way, since we got back to proper trading, immediately after the Supreme Court announcement of that result, and majority of the Azimio coalition leaders saying that we see it, any interest that we have in that particular seat. Safaricom has been hitting this number. We thought 13 million was going to be the end of it. There were just 500 shares, in fact 475,000 shares shy of 20 million mark. That's huge. KPLC as well, coming in with 9 million shares. We do not know whether that is going to continue. But then after that, KCB, NCBA is there. You would expect equity is going to be there, but seemingly not. But if you look at Kengen, is back again on that 1.1 million shares. And we've been seeing those particular energy counters, Kengen and KPLC, they've been looking up. Maybe investors who are quite close to the new government know something we don't know. That's how you look at it, because why is Kengen and KPLC headlining trading from yesterday? So probably what has been happening at KPLC is also sort of making investors say, probably, if you're going to put it in energy quarters, then that has to be Kengen and KPLC, if not KPLC, by the way. Let's watch it. and see the way it's going to go today. And get to talk about it Monday when we meet for another edition of Lookupbusiness. So this is how we go, though. What has been happening at KPLC? It has been headlining trading this week. And what a better time then for us to have that conversation and ask the question, time to invest in KPLC? Once we come back, right here on Lookupbusiness.
Yippee! Kamata plotting at 349K. Oh yes, for only 349,000 Kenyan shillings, you become a plot owner at the Great Oasis Gardens, Nanyuki. The Great Oasis Gardens, Nanyuki is located along the Nanyuki-Rumuruti Road, only 11 minutes from the Cedar Mall and right opposite Mount Kenya Wildlife Estate. This is the best place to establish the getaway home that you have always dreamt about. For every 349,000 that you deposit or pay as installment towards any of Optiven's plot of land, you get 10K cash back instantly. Jaza basi twende Nanyuki. Bigger is indeed better.
Wewe unavyofahamu mutura ni nini hasa?
Mutura ni kata nyama za kawaida, lakini nitakuwa mutura juu ya kutengeneza wenye natengenezangu. Yeah. Mutura ni intestine ikiwa imeshikanishwa na meat. Yeah, alafu ichomwe.
Welcome back to Lookupbusiness. My name is Kiage. Let's pick that conversation that we've been teasing this week. Behind the share demand for KPLC. Now, news of Ndidi Nyoro tripling his shares at KPLC really grabbed headlines across the country, and that sort of sparked an investor rush to that particular stock, which for all honesty, has been puny for a couple of years, just to get whatever is going on at that particular stock. Now, we've seen that rise. In fact, on Monday this week, there was a 10% rise at that particular stock. Then we took a break here to bring in the new president. But then on Tuesday as well, again, another 10% rise in that particular stock. At this particular time of recording this episode, we do know that indeed KPLC has broken the 2 shilling barrier mark. Right now, it's trading at 2 shillings and 11 cents. So the question is going to be, is it time to invest at Kenya Power? And what is behind this rush for Kenya Power shares? And to help us then just decipher this conversation and answer that question, we are joined by the managing partner, AMG Capital, George Munga. George, how are you doing?
Very fine, Elijah.
Let me begin like this. All of a sudden, Kenya Power. It's not the very first time that we've seen stocks rally like this in a short period. Last year, we didn't have Nairobi Business Ventures for quite some time, and then after that, that particular stock cooled down as well. Kenya Power, why?
Elijah, there's something that investors do, and that is what we call speculative selling.
Yes.
And in speculative selling, speculative buying or selling, is where an investor thinks that a certain aspect in the market will tweak the share prices either positively or negatively. When they think that the prices are going to rise positively, then you'll find they buy certain shares in the stock, in certain stocks in the market.
Yes.
Or when they think there's an investment aspect that is going to affect the share price negatively, then they sell. For the case of Kenya Power, you know Kenya Power is almost 50% held by the Kenyan government or its subsidiaries. And with a change in government, most investors have a positive outlook in that share, in that stock. You know that Kenya Power has been beholden with a lot of cartels previously, Elijah. We talked to you last time about the IPPs that were really messing up with the energy prices in the market. So in an investor's mind, I think with the change in government, they expect some of these things to be streamlined as we get into this new administration. And of course, if you look at the personality of the person of Ndindi Nyoro, and he goes there and buys, that tells you a lot, because I believe he's a close confidant of the incoming president.
Yes.
And therefore, in an investor's mind, I would want to think that there's something that maybe such a personality knows that an investor should take keen interest in. And maybe that influences the reason as to why investors are rising in to buy that stock. But if I were advising any investor today, then I would advise what we call caution optimism. That is, you must be cautiously optimistic in such shares. Remember, most government stocks are subject to a lot of government decisions here and there. Today, the government can have a very positive outlook on a certain stock, but tomorrow the same changes. Remember the case of Kenya Airways, yes, when that was in the early 2000s, when the government decided they're going to invest quite some money into that stock, on that airline. That prompted a lot of interest in that stock. But when again things didn't work out as expected, then the stocks plummeted.
Yes.
So that could be the case with KPLC. Remember, KPLC has some very serious individual shareholders who are the powers that be in the country. And if power shifts as it has done the previous 2 days, then you expect politicians to have an outlook of such a company and maybe go there to invest so that they can reap in any government interventions in that stock. So I think that is what has happened. For speculative investors, it is a good idea because the share price are likely to go high.
Yes.
Maybe they'll reach 2.53 shillings. But for long-term investors, that is a stock that I would be very cautious to invest in. Any long-term investor should look at companies that are more private, like you talk of the banking sector, yes, Equity, KCB, and so forth. But for speculative investors, of course, you'd want to go into such as KPLC, Kenya Airways, because probably the government would want to revamp some of these parastatals, or some of these companies that they have a significant shareholding in.
Yes.
And you know, when government invests, then the share prices tend to go up. So maybe the thinking of such investors that they go in there, buy the stocks. Now I know KPLC was trading at 1 shilling and 60 or 70 cents. Maybe if it goes to 3 shillings, you make your killing and you walk out of that stock.
Yes.
Yes.
But let's talk about history, George, because then when somebody like Ndindi Nyoro then starts this rush for KPLC shares, you would like to think, like you've said, that there's something that he could know that we don't know.
Correct.
When you look at the history of Kenya Power, I mean, it's not like they've been down for... There was a time this was a very attractive stock. When did the rain start beating Kenya Power? And with some of the reforms that we've seen then get pushed to Kenya Power, by the way, even as we speak right now, EPRA is recanted that former President Uhuru Kenyatta's decision then to reduce the power by 15% or 30%. Now they're up 15% again. You will say these reforms that are happening at Kenya Power right now, vis-a-vis where Kenya Power has been, do you see us going back there, or that's a long gone story now?
It will depend on how the government manages such a big utility company, Elijah. Remember, Kenya Power is a monopoly in the space that they operate in. And again, it is one of the very key utility companies that the government holds substantial shareholding, and government decisions on that on that company has a very big influence on how the shares are traded. The shares trade at the stock exchange.
Yes.
And it is not only unique to Kenya Power. Remember, we've had Kenya Airways that I've told you. We would have East African Portland Cement and many other companies that the government has substantial shareholding. My only challenge with those companies is that they're beholden to government directives or government interventions at any given time. They don't leave market fundamentals to dictate the share price at any given time. Investors are rushing in now to buy KPLC shares because they expect positive government sentiment in that directive. But if that changes, then you find the share prices going down. Remember, there's a time that I think KPLC we were trading at 6-7 shillings thereabout, and then it plummeted to I think 150, 120, 130 at a certain time. So it is an investment that. If you're not an investor, let me put that in quotes, then I would not advise. It's
not one that you rush into,
yes,
isn't it?
It's not advisable.
Yes.
And for long-term investors, I don't think those are stocks that you'd want to invest in, because sorry to say, Elijah, but such stocks have a lot of what we call insider trading, that a certain group of investors have certain information that the rest of the investors don't have. And that is why I was telling you, if I'm investing in KPLC because I've seen Ndindi Nyoro investing in that stock, then I might be making a mistake, because there are information that such a personality know with the government that we might not be able to know. And if he buys, then there's something that maybe he's targeting. So if I was a speculative investor, then I would go in there, buy as he's buying, and then when I realize that he starts selling, then I also offload my shares therein. But for a long-term investor, maybe it is not a good stock to target. Maybe just for portfolio balance, you might buy a few shares in that stock and maybe a few shares on the other counters. But you don't put all your eggs in such kind of a stock, Elijah.
Let me take you back again. I mean, George, I've looked at how analysts are saying. There's some analysts were saying, well, if you look at the reforms that were started by immediate former President Uhuru Kenyatta in this energy sector, if they are continued, and you mentioned something very important there, the IPPs that have really been costing Kenya Power a lot of their money, that if they are continued, that indeed we could go back to a long-standing 6 or 7 shillings per share from Kenya Power. Do you share the same sentiment, which then makes sense for you to grab that particular stock right now before it breaks into the 3 shillings for area?
Elijah, if KPLC was a truly privatized company, that's a stock that I'll buy without even opening my eyes. But KPLC is not that kind of a company.
Yes.
It is what a quasi-public company, because government has substantial shareholding in that company. Remember, Elijah, KPLC is a monopoly. There's a time that KPLC were reporting profits of 2, 3, 4 billion, and then they went back and reported, I think, 10 billion loss down, and then now they're back at 5.6. If you look at their profitability swings over the last 10 years, then you cannot predict where their profits next year would be, because today they are in profit, tomorrow they are in loss, the following day they are in profit, the following day they are in loss.
Yes.
That points to
despite the conversation that immediately after the reforms, then they went back to profitability.
Exactly.
Yes.
So it depends on what the government does in that space.
Yes.
And sometimes when you leave decisions to government are not the best businessmen in town. I can tell you that for sure.
Yes.
Because they go with what we call convenience vis-a-vis practical business sense. Today, those reforms are bearing fruits, Elijah, at KPLC, and you've seen they're reporting profits of 5.6 billion thereabout. But tomorrow, if the new government reversed that, then they'll go back to the losses that that they had reported previously.
Yes.
Remember, some of these IPPs, Elijah, sorry to say, the shareholders of some of these IPPs are not you and me. They are the powers that be in government, and some of these people have a lot of power in the corridors of power. So you cannot wish them away as you would want to do. So we are only hoping that the incoming government will be prudent enough to do that which is good for KPLC. If they were to do that, then we can see a sustainable growth in profits over the next 3, 4, 5 years, because this is a monopoly and everybody uses power in the market. But if they were to reverse that, or if they were to listen to the business interests around KPLC, then you might see KPLC going back into loss position, unfortunately.
So let's talk about then investor sentiment. If that is anything to go by, that you and I will look at what is going on in the energy sector in the country, and I will say that this is why probably Kenya Power is making these rounds. Number one, this decision by EPRA then to cut the 15% by former President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta. That's one. And then this continued reforms again. Do you think just that 15% cut could then spark this interest that we've seen from investors saying, well, if indeed they're making profits now with this 15% cut, what's going to happen if the 15% cut then is taken out?
I agree with you, Elijah. Remember, power is one of the most heavily taxed service in Kenya today. And it is the government that makes the decision on what to tax and what not to tax. So if government was to remove some of those taxes, one, they'll improve what we call absorption in the market. And if they were to do that, then KPLC is able to offload their power in the market and earn money out of it. Remember, currently the situation we have excess supply on the energy side, vis-a-vis what is demanded in the market, and the demand is not. We don't match the two because of the cost that we are trying to offload this product into the market. So if government can work on that, then you'll find KPLC raking in more revenues into the profit and loss, and therefore they'll report better bottom line in the future. Remember, EPRA is quasi-government. Let me put it that way. So they reflect what the government is thinking at any particular time, and some of these taxes are at their whim, so they can decide to do that. They remove the 50%, tomorrow they introduce another tax. So it will be dependent on how the Ministry of Energy looks at the future of our energy sector, and how they want to propel that sector, so that not only does Kenya Power earns revenue, but it also supports the manufacturing sector around the country. Because at the end of the day, Elijah, you might have power the way we have it, but you cannot offload it because of the cost that you are offloading it to the market. So I think we want to leave it to government to do what is good for the country, and if they were to do that, then definitely KPLC will make money. And any stock where the company, the underlying company makes profits, definitely those stocks normally have an upward trajectory. So I have no doubt that if government was genuine enough to do that which is right for the market, then KPLC shares will go up.
But look to the sentiment as well, George, this week, and we've seen that trend, especially immediately after the the swearing in of the current president, William Ruto, into government. It's as if we were looking for places to put our monies, especially after watching the country go through this electioneering period. We've seen counters like Safaricom, by the way, just the other day, hit 13 million shares in trading volume. Banking quarters have been flourishing as well. Could you say that whatever we're seeing at Kenya Power now could be as a result of the bent-up investment that didn't really happen as the country was within the electioneering period? Now investors have money, so any little spark would essentially drive investments in these stocks?
I would want to agree with you, and I would want to relate it to now the geopolitical, the world market all over. Across the world, if you look at the stock markets across the world, stock markets have not been performing very well, and therefore investors have been holding monies that they don't have places to invest to get good returns. I mean, so for what happened, the good thing that happened to Kenya is that our transition was very peaceful, and therefore that gave investors a lot of confidence in the market. So I foresee that maybe in the next 1, 2, 3 months there'll be a lot of activity in our Nairobi Stock Exchange, and that is because of investor confidence. And number two, there was a lot of liquidity in the market that had nowhere to go to. If you look at most commercial banks across in our country, they have a lot of liquidity that they could not offload, meaning there are no investment opportunities around the country where they can place this money to get good returns. That is why you've seen a lot of interest in the stock exchange, because now this money is finding its place in the investment, in the money market, or in the investment market, at least to earn a revenue back to the investors. Yes. So if you maintain that, then you expect a lot of activity, and with activity, of course, you'll find the share prices going up. And then again, in most developed countries, you look at the New York Stock Exchange, the Nasdaq, and all that. They've been underperforming, and most of those investment in those markets are looking for alternative markets where they can invest. Yes. And of course, the most viable alternative markets are the emerging economies like ours. And with a peaceful transition, then those investors look at us as a good bet for their investments. So you'll get a lot of FDIs coming into the country, and even local investors now will have confidence to go back to the stock exchange and buy some of these counters.
Yes, pretty much. So other questions that are coming up from this is that we do know indeed that Kenya Power could use some of these investments that are coming into the company in the short term, then George, because if we're going to talk about this not being an option for a long-term investor, in the short term, what do we expect to see from Kenya Power in terms of the performance going by the demand of the shares of the NSE right now?
KPLC year ends, I think, at the end of the year, yes. And I'll be very interested to see how they perform in this financial year, yes. And even going into 2023. If you look at how they've performed over the last 1 year, then it's positive because they reported 5.6 billion profit in the last financial year. We want to see how they perform in the current financial year. But if they maintain the reforms that they've done over the last 1 year, then chances are that they'll still maintain the profit streak going into the future. Remember, I always say that KPLC is a monopoly, and a monopoly, I don't understand how a monopoly can make a loss. I don't get it from any economist. If you're not in the market, then how do you then come up and say you're making a loss from your project? It doesn't make sense. Yes. Meaning there's some inefficiencies in your systems that you build in the systems that are eating into your revenues. So if those reforms can be maintained, and that is where we really rely on government positivity or government decisions to be rational, yes. So that they look at these on a bigger picture, something that can not only benefit the company to make profit, but only benefit the economy at large, because manufacturers depend on KPLC to be able to manufacture competitive goods to float in the market. If they don't do that, then they're producing products that cannot be consumed in markets because of prices. So in the short term, Elijah, it will depend on how the new government manages the interests of the shareholders of the IPPs and other stakeholders in that subsector, yes. Vis-a-vis the bigger picture. Yes. That is where the rubber meets the road. If they're able to crack that, Elijah, then you'll see KPLC making money going into the future. But if they slacken and these guys get a better part of the decision making, then I can assure you that KPLC go back to where it was.
Yes. Let me take you back to again a comment that I saw online of when Didi Nyoro actually did get the shares, as we come to the tail end of this conversation, George. I said that expect an announcement then from President William Ruto on exactly how he's going to support the energy sector. And then somebody said, if you looked at some of the decisions that that is made quick in office, number one, supporting KBC, we did see in a swearing-in ceremony. So they said, is somebody who's pro-government institutions, should he make any announcement that is going to touch on KPLC, would that be the offset of, again, increased investments more than we've seen it in the past 1 week at KPLC?
Something I've always had a problem in, Elijah, is yes. When government wants to get into private sector and do business in the market. Normally governments don't succeed yes. in doing business in the market. We've seen that with East African Portland Cement, when government decided now that because they wanted to lower the cost of building materials, they wanted to produce their own cement. It didn't work. It didn't work. We've seen that with Kenya Airways, and government starts meddling into that market. It has not worked. We've seen that with, of course, with KBC previously, when governments try to meddle in that. It doesn't work. My best bet is to support the private sector to flourish as they are, yes, but not government meddling into the private sector. So it is a 50-50 chance that we are betting in, because governments come in with a lot of interest. And sorry to say, Elijah, but in my analysis, politicians are selfish people, so to speak.
Yes.
They don't go into something that they're not going to earn personal interest. They don't have personal interest in. So you'd want to ask yourself, what is the personal interest of the government functionaries in KPLC at this particular time? Why do they want to focus on this company? As an investor, you must have those questions in your mind. And if you don't answer those questions, then you might get into a counter that maybe are either loss-making or you cannot offload in the shortest time, possible. So it's a wait and see. Like as I was telling you, sometimes as a country, as an economist, you must support the government of the day so that they succeed. But again, you must be cautiously optimistic that they'll make the right decisions, yes, for the business sector. I want to take you back, Elijah, and I always give reference to this. When our third president came into office, what he did was to leave private sector to do what they do best, and that is do business in the market. He didn't meddle. Mm-hmm. When you see governments meddling into business, take it with a pinch of salt, because normally they don't come with clean hands. So if I was to say that. So for KPLC, my take would have been that government just streamlines and then maybe have a strong board that can oversee implementation of the reforms, mm-hmm, that the previous regime had started, so that those reforms can yield fruits to the market. But the moment you see government seriously getting interested in a particular industry, then that is a red flag for you. Fantastic. George, thank you very much for coming by. It was lovely speaking to you, as always. Thank you very much.
Now, according to George, it is not a stock that any long-term investor really may want to go in. And he's saying, well, be careful, because when you see the caliber of the largest single shareholders of a KPLC are, they might be knowing something that you and I will not know. So when they decide to go out, you might remain inside there and waiting for that moment to get out, and it's not going to be coming. But anyway, so many areas to put your money in. We've seen exactly what's going on with Safaricom this week. Equity, NCBA, Cooperative, they're all looking up. In fact, they've been hitting 1 million plus in daily trading since we got our new president. So hopefully you do know exactly what you put your money in. For all what we have to do here at Lookupbusiness then is just to wait and see. Like George said, take him back to the time that he came online, right here at the studio at Lookup TV, across all your social media platforms. I am at Kiage Simba. I'll see you tomorrow for another one.